Hi, Alexandra. Welcome to the show.
Hello, John. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. I did a little bit of reading about some of the things you've done. You have one book that we're going to talk about, and it's a self-healing book, a holistic self-healing book. Well, that sounds fascinating. Before we get to that, though, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and how you got to the point where you wrote this book?
Of course. Thank you. I am originally from Bulgaria. I came to the United States in 2000 at age 24 to pursue a master's and a doctoral degree in classical violin. And once I graduated from Louisiana State University, defending my monograph in 2007, I realized the music market was getting smaller and smaller, and there was less demand for musicians and more competition. And I had to recognize I was not competitive enough after being a musician professionally for 26 years. And at age 32, I went through a really early midlife crisis where I reached my emotional and professional and personal rock bottom. And I put myself through nursing school in 2008. I entered the workforce as a nurse in 2011, at which point, very unfortunately, my employer, the Syracuse Symphony Orchestra, declared bankruptcy because of all the problems with the financial crisis in the United States. And I have been a nurse since 2011. Then I became a real estate investor in 2014. I own 3 real estate businesses, which I'm proud to manage by myself and with my boyfriend of 15 years now. And in 2020, it was very ironic when the COVID crisis hit. The idea of the book came because many people started asking, how did you get from where you were to where you are right now? Because especially those who knew me, they knew I struggled with low self-esteem and very poor self-confidence for well over 2 decades. And then all of a sudden, in their eyes, I was where I was, which was not a sudden process at all. But because they were busy and I was busy, I didn't tell them all the details of this journey over 10, 15 years that's happened with me since I started pursuing the nursing career. And the book came as an answer to their questions and also answer to other people's questions like patients, clients, mentees in real estate, how they can accomplish what I could or something like that that would work for them, for their goals and their dreams.
I see. It's a fairly hefty book. I think it's over 400 pages. When did you start writing it?
I started in January of 2020, John. The book is actually less than 400 pages, I'm proud to say. Uh, but it took me 6 months to write because the structure of the book came immediately in my head because I structured everything the way I perform my tasks in life with my health, with my spiritual life, with my career, with my finances and my relationships. I recognized for myself there were these 5 very important aspects or pillars in my life. And I knew that I had really done my best to elevate all 5 of these over the course of the last 15 years to a level where I was happy, even though they're always a constant work in progress. But I was at the point where I said, now I have really control over these 5 things and I can share with others how I did it and hopefully be helpful with my experience. So 6 months to write the book. But because I'm a foreigner, obviously, you can tell that I cannot hide my accent to save my life. And the same reflected in my writing. When you write a book like this, you can see how many things can be said differently in different chapters. So it took me a year and a half to actually edit it to where I was happy to present it to a professional editor through my publisher. So in all honesty, it took like a year and a half.
Mm-hmm. How do you break it down? You say there's 5 pillars that you mentioned?
5 pillars to keep it very simple, right? So the health
Okay.
pillar, the spirituality pillar, the career pillar, the finances pillar, and the relationships pillar.
Okay.
But
Well, let's take that one at a time. You want to elaborate on each one of those?
yes, so the main principle though is that you need to recognize the importance of all these in your life, the importance of not neglecting one for the sake of another, or not neglecting 3 for the sake of 2. Because what I see as a nurse and as a investor mentee is that people really like to focus on something that they perceive to be their problem when the bigger problem is elsewhere in their life pillars, that they want to neglect it, ignore that because they're afraid to tackle the main problem somewhere else. For instance, my patients say, well, I don't have money to afford this and this. How can I do that? I said, but why don't you also consider that your health is down the tubes, that you're having 3 chronic diseases with potential for multiple organ damage that are damaging you already, but you're worried about your finances when you should really combine both. How you can afford this extremely healthy diet that is unassociated with chronic disease, which is inexpensive. And at the same time, you learn how to be disciplined with your spending, the money that you're not going to be spending now on the bad food that you are eating and making you sick. And that money you can save and preserve and invest for assets that are cash flowing and unrelated to your job. I mean, that's a very simple example, but of how everything is connected. So I do teach people time management. I'm adamant about time management, but with the 5 pillars, see your health, spiritual life, career, finances, and relationships, the first most important step is to find what you can improve and why you want to improve these things. Then you need to you have to clear room for what you want to accomplish in every one of these aspects. So you have to get rid of things that you don't need, that you've been keeping or holding on to for whatever reason. And this is the hardest part, to get clean of unnecessary stuff in each of these pillars. Okay. And then suddenly you have this amazing space to fill with much more positive stuff. Positive in your health, because the health is, most simply said, is your diet, your fitness, and your detox regimens. But the mind, the spirituality is the same thing. Mind detox, that's your meditation. You're cleaning your mind from unnecessary thoughts that are not allowing you to focus on the essential parts of your day. Then the mind nourishment, which is the diet, that's the inspiration that you put in your mind. And finally, the fitness for the mind is the lifelong learning process. You constantly have to challenge your mind with new ideas that seem incomprehensible at first. Like when I started reading investing books, I couldn't understand 75% of the jargon. Most people would throw these books away. I decided I would challenge myself that way. And it was very scary because it makes you feel stupid. It makes you feel inadequate. It makes you feel, okay, so how am I going to manage this with my time? Well, what can you take out of your day to actually learn this important thing? And then with the career and finances is the same thing. What in your career is unnecessary so you can actually learn the marketable skills that will make you useful to your employer and customers and make you hard to replace? And then with your finances, which habits do you trash from your life that make you spend on things that you really shouldn't be spending? And then you'll be astounded how much money you have left to invest for cash flowing assets that are unrelated to a job. And that will give you the choice in 5 years to work or not to work, or to have a business or not to have a business. And then, of course, the 5th aspect, the relationships. That is all encompassing with all these 4 life aspects, because the people you hang around will influence you greatly or poorly in the remaining 4 aspects. So you have to be extremely selective with the relationships you choose. They are your responsibility once you're 16, 17, 18 years of age. And in your adult life, there is no reason for not setting limits with people who are not influencing your self-growth, your personal growth in a way that you would like them to influence, yet you shouldn't be using them as excuses for not pursuing your dreams and goals once you have established those. And it's a tough thing, John, because many people really don't have a clue what would make them happy. So they rely on others to give them ideas for what's good for them, what's bad for them in every one of these life aspects, whereas these relations, they haven't even thought about their own lives, let alone give you advice what to do. And people don't realize how much time they waste on other people's viewpoints and opinions. It's the hardest thing to define your own goals. That was at least the hardest one for me. And there are chapters in the book dedicated to mind exercises, how to embrace challenges, how to understand yourself first and find your own goals and what you really want, without any feeling of guilt or remorse or fear of judgment from others. Right. Everything done within ethical and moral limits, of course. Yeah. But there's so much to self-explore in every one of us.
Yeah. Well, relationships can be a problem, certainly. The divorce rate and everything shows that. But not only that, you know, our parents said, don't hang around with the wrong crowd. I mean, that we got that message. Right. I got that message early on. Whatever the wrong crowd is, I mean, the effort is there to steer the child into the right crowd. The spiritual aspect, I wonder, how do you discern between spirituality and religion?
Well, see, I'm not religious. I'll be completely honest about this. I am atheist by choice because I just am very disappointed in organized religion and how much blood has been shed for religious motives, and seeing people who have caused tremendous calamity to humanity gaining no retribution, or like laughable retribution comparing to the calamity they've caused to so many people. And we saw this in the last 2 years. Certainly, we keep seeing it. But spirituality, it's truly about your own understanding of yourself in the most honest and pure way, so that you have the real picture about yourself without unnecessary guilt and self-degradation, just to get the objective way what you want to accomplish. But I am very big on cleaning the mind through meditation. See, I like meditation much better than prayer, because even when you pray silently, you're still listening to your own voice talking. Whereas meditation is all about listening to everything around you, the world around you, whatever you want to call it, that universal energy that we are surrounded with, we're part of. And learning to listen to the world around you is what ultimately will help you make this world workable, because when you see what it needs in comparison to what you need, being listened to always makes you more cooperative. And so if you learn to listen to those around you in a respectful way, see how you can make their life easier, okay? It will come back to you with their cooperation, with their desire to support you and help you, even if it's just emotionally, but to say, hey, you're up to something here. Keep doing it, persevere, hang in there, you'll do great. That's huge in certain days. That's like the world when you have a bad day. But see, spirituality, when you clear your mind, you're more able to attend to the world around you without, how do I say, you set the limits with those around you, but you're still able to serve them in a way that it's really perfectly fine for them, and they will appreciate you, and you're feeling useful to those people. And they give back in return in their own way, the best way they can, or not so much, but it's okay, because you don't have any expectations of others. You only expect of yourself. And that puts the balance very differently. It leaves much less room for disappointment with the world. And then you start appreciating every little detail in your day, because when there is no disappointment due to low expectations, everything turns around and it looks way more favorable, and you realize how much you really have that you didn't know about before, because you were blind to it, or deaf, or both, because you had to complain, you had to demand of others rather than yourself. You expected everybody else to change for you rather than you actually changing yourself a little bit, and see how that works. Yeah. I think that's a very important part of spirituality for me.
Yeah. Let's talk about nutrition a little bit.
So I am a healthcare professional. Therefore, I have to be 100% example to my patients, loved ones, and friends of nutrition that is uncompromising to health. At least that's the way how I understand healthcare, which I know that many of my colleagues will not agree with. It was a big cultural shock when I saw the nurses and doctors in the hospital when I was a nursing student, and when I started working as a nurse in a hospital, how unhealthy they lived. But I stopped red meat and poultry when I was 24 years old. So that was way before I knew that I was going to be a nurse, but I immersed myself into yoga at that time for 7 years. But 6 years ago, in December of 2017, I completely ditched all animal products from my diet, because I knew that organic, whole food, plant-based diet was not associated with any of the profitable chronic diseases that are plaguing America today. Organic, whole foods, plant-based diet. And why is it not expensive? Well, for one thing, my boyfriend and I, we don't touch restaurant food, because the way the restaurants cook stuff, A, it's not organic. B, it's cooked with tap water, which is full of endocrine disruptors and all sorts of chemicals. But C, they don't even clean their pots properly to decontaminate it from the previous customer who has used animal fat and animal products for their meal. But it's inexpensive, because, I mean, that's the most trivial thing you can hear from me. When you buy organic lentils or rice, pound of lentils comes a long way when you cook it. It triples its size. So you can eat this very cheap pound of lentils, organic lentils, with some nice spicing and a beautiful green salad, also organic, for 2-3 days with your family, because it just grows so much in size when you cook it. It's the easiest thing to cook. It takes 25 minutes to prepare. You can cut a carrot or an onion in there. I mean, that's the absolute simplest example I'm giving you. I mean, in fact, in chapter 5 of my book, I have described many, many recipes from our household, each of which are favorites because they're just so simple and so tasty. And vegetables and fruits, you have farmers markets. You can shop around several places and see what the best prices are. But if you purchase groceries once a week and you only buy what you need because you have pre-planned your meal plan for the week and you're not going to deviate from it, you're going to be disciplined with that. And you will have plenty of finances to support a healthy diet like that. It's fruits, vegetables, grains, and legumes. Grains and legumes expand like you won't believe when you cook them, and they're highly, highly nutritious plants. And this is why, I mean, we never suffered any financial losses by switching our diets completely to vegan. And that's what I'm telling my patients. But see, people like to use all sorts of excuses to not abandon their unhealthy habits, because they ultimately don't believe in themselves, in their own ability that they can turn their health around. I have a video about this on YouTube, which hasn't gotten too many views yet, but it's very relevant how you truly pursue your health. And the other problem, John, is that people just don't understand what this food really does to the vascular system, and then how you develop cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancers, because your immune system gets suppressed from the animal products sold at the grocery stores that are loaded with all sorts of drugs from this industry to keep these animals from getting sick from each other. Well, then all this goes into your body. And I knew that the derivative products from the animals, like the milks, butters, yogurt, eggs, sour cream, you name it, all this carried the same toxins. They didn't just magically disappear from these products. So what was the point of eating it, right? And the thing was, see, in chapter 4, my boyfriend gave me his permission to describe what happened to him when he developed pre-diabetes. And he absolutely freaked out because he knew it was kind of hereditary. I told him, no, look, you have the predisposition, doesn't mean you have to develop the disease because you also inherited some lifestyles from your family that can be changed. And when the prediabetes happened, he said, we're going plant-based. And after 4 months, he did another blood work with our doctor. There was no longer prediabetes. It went away. So we stuck with the plant-based diet, no compromises, no excuses, no exceptions, no nothing of that. You know, you build integrity over the course of 3 or 4 months eating completely plant-based, and you become a pride owner of your diet, of your lifestyle, of your perseverance. And that's also a form of self-respect, because bad food is one of the biggest temptations in life. So if you get rid of it, like I said before, with the holistic confidence system, you really get rid of the things you don't need that are outright harm you. I mean, there's tens of thousands of pages of research done of how much healthier a plant-based diet is. So there is no argument there. It's just that the doctors don't learn this because the pharmaceutical companies pay for their education in the hospital, for the programs that doctors don't know nutrition or biochemistry anymore. All they want is to prescribe medications. Great, but you have choices. I mean, there is so much information out there. Books, internet articles, you name it. And just experienced plant-based health practitioners, who are not as many as the other health practitioners, but you can find the right person if you want to, right? So his health, my boyfriend's health, just boosted and our energy levels tenfold after the change in diet. And so for the 6 years that we have done this, I think that's it gives me credibility to tell my patients, hey, listen, you need to go plant-based. And of course, the first question I get, are you plant-based? I said, yes, I am plant-based. I will never ask you to do something that I'm not doing myself, because you will never take me seriously.
So when you say plant-based, what's your opinion on the new products that are coming out, plant-based burgers? You know, they're advertising that. What's your take on that?
No. There is nothing like buying your own ingredients and preparing them yourself. And it's really not hard to prepare. It's easy. And if you cannot set aside an hour twice a week to cook your own meal, you're doing something really wrong with your time. That's what I tell people all the time, because it's honorable to be able to prepare your food. I'm sorry. It's not a humiliation. It's not a servant's work. You should be your own servant. Your health is your biggest asset other than your time. See, I learned to cook when I was 8 because I'm from Eastern Europe. My parents were busy, and there was no way that they wouldn't teach me how to cook when I was like under
Me
10
too.
years old. There
Yeah.
was no,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's an asset. People think it's humiliating to learn to cook. It's crazy. I just can't believe this. Okay. So the pre-made products, yes, the industry is responding to the increasing demand for healthier food, but even if it says non-GMO and organic, I mean, maybe once a year we can try a product like that, but as a rule of thumb, we really don't do that because, like, say there are some places that sell plant-based burgers, but they're full of genetically modified organisms.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just as carcinogenic as the red beets. It's dangerous for your colon cancer risk, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be extremely critically thinking, and it's tempting for people to buy these products because they call it convenient. Cancer treatment is not convenient. Any autoimmune disease that you get from chemicals and preservatives or neurological disorder, that is not convenient. Okay, so I will be much happier to inconvenience myself preparing a meal twice a week. We love leftovers. It doesn't have to be the different meal every day. But I generally try to avoid these products because they put things in them that make them very addictive, John, because they spice them in ways, they put some chemicals that they want you to crave it to buy again. Okay. And all of these products, I mean, at the beginning, we tried a couple because we were curious. Okay. 6 years ago, we'll buy a product like you mentioned here and there to see what it is. All of them, without exception, were just as salty as the restaurant food and just as greasy as the restaurant food. So it's not healthy.
Yeah.
They try to make it tasty with the premise that it's plant-based, but it doesn't mean it's good quality food. I mean, I tell people you can be vegan and still eat very unhealthy. So you need to put time to learn about your nutrition. The simpler, the closest to the soil it is, the better for you. And that's just it.
What would be your advice to give to people? We're adults, so we can talk about what we cook and eat. But when you have children, you got a family, it's a busy life. Both mother and father work, and they come home, and you got 2 or 3 kids to feed, and they just, jump into the convenience of cooking beef and chicken and whatnot. How can you respond to a family that's thinking about doing this with children? Children can be very picky sometimes.
Right. Well, so in chapter 12, I've talked about is the relationship chapter, how to teach the children to appreciate this type of diet. For one thing, you teach them. First of all, you have to set an example with your own eating habits as a parent. Okay, so the parents have to start from themselves. You take the child shopping with you. You explain which products are purchased and which products are better left on the shelf. You learn to read labels together. You learn about what each fruit, vitamin, mineral does for your body. Then you teach your children how to cook. You can take turns cooking in the family. Okay, if you have very young children, that's one thing. But when they start growing and become really picky, right? When they're teenagers and all that, these kids are perfectly able to cook. I'm sorry. They are perfectly able to cook. It's about time management, about prioritization. If you have several children, you guys can take turns. It's not saying that the same person has to cook all the time for the entire family. That's very tiring and they'll hate that. But learning is in doing. And you learn to appreciate things better if you actually do them, if you get involved in with your hands and your mind, preparing this meal and seeing what it takes to prepare it, how it tastes. You learn the real taste of fruits and vegetables when you eliminate all this extra salt and sugar and fat from your diet. And you learn how to taste and what these products actually taste like, because in a restaurant, that doesn't give you an idea. It only gives you a texture idea, but everything they dump into that food has nothing to do with the actual taste of the food. So that's the other problem. And that's what parents can really do to teach the children and make them participate in the cooking process at first. See, I loved helping my mother in the kitchen when I was young, but that's because I didn't want to practice the violin. So I find lots of excuses to cut this and wash the dishes so I could practice the violin less, until they finally caught my motives and said, no, you're going to practice now. So the time was structured differently once they understood my true motives for helping my mother in the kitchen. But everybody has their manipulative ways, especially when you're a child. And there are ways to learn, but the parents, again, some parents use the children and the family as excuses for not changing their own habits.
Yeah.
And that's where the problem is, okay? Because if parents are determined to eat healthy, they will teach their children to eat healthy. That's never a problem.
Yeah.
Same with investing. Parents who want to invest in real estate to help the family and help the children towards the college payments and all that, people who plan long-term with investments, they involve the children and teach the children how to be financially responsible early on. But the same thing is with food and health.
I recall a vegan colleague of mine back in Toronto when I was working, and he said he's not about to give up chocolate anytime. What's wrong with chocolate?
It has milk. Most of it has milk, right? If it's vegan chocolate, the dark chocolate that says it doesn't have milk, the factories, they are obligated to write in the package on the back whether the product is made in the place that handles milk. So there is the risk of contamination. That's mostly for people with lactose intolerance.
Okay.
But many of the dark chocolates, we discovered that they actually have very harmful metals in them. So that's what made us stop the chocolate too. You know, you can't trust really anything that's factory made anymore. This is where our lack of trust with all these companies comes from, because they really are all for profit. I'm sorry. And the farmers that grow their things in the ground that don't have the advertising budget, we believe that these are people with better motives. Now, they put lots of nitrates in their produce, and that's a problem, but you can tell by the way it tastes usually, and by abnormal size, unnatural size of certain vegetables grown with a ton of nitrates. But if it's US certified organic, I mean, they have to have some integrity to not lose their business. And it does make a difference in taste. And then, of course, you need to know how to, clean all that. But the chocolate, for a short time, we ate vegan chocolate. And then we did some more research to find out about the metals and stuff they were put in there that was not announced on the package. And we're like, you know what? It's still processed food. We don't really need that. The whole thing is, when you wonder about these pleasurable items, right? The little pleasures of life in your diet, does your body really need it or not? Yeah. Because if your body doesn't need it, there is no reason to eat it. But it's a mind thing. It's an emotional thing. We need some emotional crutch in our diet because, oh, I'm eating so healthy. Now I need to do something stupid. I need something to please myself. No, that's really not the way. And that's another reason why, I mean, that's not quite concurs with your question, but when people say, well, how about 3 vegan days and 4 unvegan days, or 1 such and such days, I tell them no, because your brain will be constantly latching onto the day when you're going to be eating your animal products. And you will really not appreciate what you're doing for yourself while eating plant-based for a day or 2 in the week. So we both quit, my boyfriend, he quit cold turkey, all these animal products. And yeah, we sought vegan chocolate for a while because we both loved chocolate, but then we did some more research and unfortunately had to give it up.
What's your opinion on noodles? There's all kinds of noodle dishes you can have, the vegetarian, or I'll save the question later for vegetarian versus vegan, but what do you think of noodles?
Well, depends where they're produced, depends what they're made of. If they're rice noodles, or are they wheats, are you trying to stay away from gluten? Okay. Are you trying to really not suppress your immune system with gluten? Because you most likely know that nowadays the wheat products that have gluten have 10 times more gluten than they used to have 40 years ago because of the genetic modification. So you need to be mindful of these things and see what your real goals are. Rice noodles that are made in certain Asian countries are okay. But here in the United States, there is a lot of arsenic in the rice. So you have to be mindful of these things too. Nutrition is one of the most complex sciences. That's why I like to keep it really, really simple and buy as much possible, anything that's come directly from the soil and as little processed as possible. I know that I have better chance to hit a clean product than if the more processed it gets, the more your risk increases with substances that are added to it that you read, something might say on a package, but you really didn't witness the process of how it's made. And it's just, you're taking your own risk, you're taking your chances.
Sounds to me that you are not shopping in your regular grocery store. Where does one go if not at a grocery store to buy the proper material?
So there is a local farmers market here that I utilize for most of my organic produce. Then there is another chain that sells very nice bulk organic oats, that's where I buy my oats bulk for lots of preparations that I make. Then there is yet one other store that I find some produce that's a better price, but it is certified organic produce. Again, it's raw vegetables. I know exactly what I'm buying. It's nothing pre-made, nothing pre-packaged, none of that stuff, right? So what you do for the course of 2 or 3 months, you will find the 5 grocery stores around you and 2 farmers markets, say, which one has the best stuff. You create your recipes, menus, and schedules, and then you just shop once a week. That's what I do. I don't like shopping more than once a week because it's a time-consuming process. So I manage my time by knowing exactly which shop I have a way to shop with the 3 shops I have, markets that I have chosen. And I don't compromise that because it really works very well. It's been very consistent for the last 5-6 years. I haven't had to change anything with that. But now with the inflation, things could fluctuate. You just have to be vigilant at all times and keep exploring various places along the way, just so you have the information and the resources in case one of your food suppliers doesn't work so well. But I also know there are certain stores in my area that have rallied and lobbied against the labeling of products, non-GMO and organic, so that people don't know what they're buying. And I don't shop in these stores anymore, plain and simple.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have integrity, you don't have my business. No label, no buy.
Okay.
No woman, no cry. No label, no buy.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
There's a product I really enjoy called tempeh. That's a form of soya. It's a
Right.
soya product, and it's fermented, if I believe. And then there's tofu. What's your take on tofu versus tempeh?
I prefer the tofu. I think it's a more pure product. It's if it's non-GMO and organic. But for people with kidney stones, for instance, I know that soy has a lot of oxalates. So if you have any kidney stone issues, then you have to avoid these products altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, again, it depends how processed it is. The edamame beans are the most purest, primitive form of soy, and we cook those every once in a while. But again, if a family member has kidney stones, then you have to be very cautious about. That's yet another, I mean, depending on your personal health and issues before you start a healthy diet.
Okay.
But for the most time, soy is okay if it is non-GMO and organic, because this is one of the products that has been mostly loaded with GMOs, like corn. Okay, it's notorious for a lot of experimentation, a lot of genetic modification. So mind your source, where you are and where it's coming from, and then you can have it. I mean, I wouldn't have it every day, but
Okay.
reasonable amounts.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I meant to ask, and I'll ask now, the difference between vegetarianism and veganism. Can you explain that?
Well, of course, in vegetarianism, you don't eat the meat or poultry, and some vegetarians don't eat fish, but you will eat the dairy, the eggs, butter, yogurt, cheese. These products vegetarians eat. And like I said, I was half vegetarian for 17 years. From 2000 to 2017, I ate seafood. So that would make me a pescatarian, although many pescatarians would ditch the derivative animal products that I told you, like the eggs and dairy. I was eating eggs and dairy, and I was eating seafood. Vegetarians might decide not to eat seafood at all, along with not eating the other animals themselves, but they will eat their derivative products. And like I said, the problem with that is that when you're buying these products, they contain the same cholesterol, same hormones, same toxins from the animals. They don't go away. And they're just the same contaminants.
Okay.
Which is why we stopped these products. Okay, and vegan is completely plant-based. You don't touch any animal product or derivative product of an animal.
Okay. The last question concerning nutrition, I think it's an important subject, but what's your take on alcohol?
I've never been able to tolerate hard alcohol, liquor. I've never been able to. Just suffices to smell whiskey, and I can't even handle it. But
Me too. Yeah.
red wine is said to have antioxidants. Careful where you buy it, right? It has to be a clean region and all that. Chilean, Argentinian, Australian wines, I would like every once in a while. Red wine, I wouldn't drink it every evening because of what it does to my brain.
Yeah.
But the antioxidant part, and of course, we know French people tend to be pretty healthy, and they drink wine every day, sometimes twice a day. They pride themselves with their wine consumption, but they have very good quality wines there. Okay. So you got to consider that their tradition is centuries long, and they know how to make wine. So the quality of the product, I have spent months and months and months without drinking any alcohol. I started drinking alcohol for the first time wine when I was 32 years old. So very late in my life. I never felt the necessity to do it. It's expensive too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I know that red wine has antioxidants. So if that will enhance the taste of your dinner, and help you relax a little bit,
Okay.
that's a very personal choice.
Sure.
But it's a plant-based product, so
Okay. I guess you can say that. Yeah, of course.
right.
Yeah, sure. The pillar known as the relationships, that could be just as difficult for some people, if not more so than nutrition. Nutrition, you can, hunker down and say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to follow some of your recipes. But if you're reading this book and you're realizing your relationships aren't healthy, what can a person do about that?
Step up onto their decision and change the way things are. If you can set limits with certain people, then you can detach yourself from certain people. You can make yourself less and less available to those who are wasting your time rather than helping you grow. And I generally advise, and I learned this from my mentors, they said, no intricate explanations are needed because most people will misunderstand you. They'll never agree with you. But if you make yourself just less available to people who you honestly recognize are not contributing to your personal growth, and I'm not even talking about like abusive relationships that are people who are putting you down in some ways. That's obviously you shouldn't be around such a person, but there are also lots of people who are very well intentioned. I mean, that's the hardest part, John. People who are very well intentioned, they give you all this advice that is completely ignorant but very well intentioned, and then they have these fears for you and all that. They're clinging on you. These are not bad people, they're good people, yet they're in the way in the sense that they're consuming vast portions of your time, which is your most valuable asset, and you really can't take care of yourself because you're more concerned about taking care of these people, although in a very large percentage of them are capable of taking care of themselves. They don't need you for that, but they just use you as some kind of a support that it's not necessarily in the right place at the right time. That is entirely the personal responsibility of the individual who has recognized that they're in a troublesome relationship somewhere along the way. And you can absolutely make steps in the right direction, whatever you determine to be the right direction yourself, but you just have to ditch all the fears and just act in your best interest, because life really is too short. And if you have seen that certain relationship is not going anywhere, and there is not even room for blaming, you just have to take action and see if am I better with this person or without that person. And it's just a step as responsible as everything else that you do. And I'm not sure why people fear this so much, because see, for instance, when I change my diet, just like said, nutrition is harder, relationships are harder. Well, there are people who they wouldn't even go out anymore in restaurants that they could purchase their food the way they wanted it, and I could have vegan. And then they started interrogating me. So why don't you make an exception? They said, no, nothing bad will happen to you. And all this BS, because you explain to them, yeah, you make an exception once, then you make it a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh time, and they didn't get it. So eventually these relationships kind of dissipated because you start asking yourself the question, okay, you want to be with me for me, or do you just need company to eat a large, nasty meal with and share some gossips here and there? And it teaches you very well how to reevaluate your relationships and your choices, because we change as individuals and we reevaluate some choices and we say, maybe that choice 5 years ago wasn't the wisest after all. That friendship was kind of nice, but am I more entertained, or am I learning from this relationship something that is of value? Is it always the same thing? Are we gossiping about the third party for the 2 hours we are together? How is this contributing to my goals right now? Oh, wait, it's not, right? So various relationships, whether with colleagues, with friends. I mean, I have a principle. Look, where I work, none of my colleagues is my friend. They're colleagues, they're co-workers. We are together to serve our patients, not to share our personal lives and complain about personal issues. That's not what work is for at all. And people love to share all of their life stories at work. I can't stand that. It's a complete waste of time. It's not doing justice to the clients that we're dealing with at all. And these types of relationships, I keep extremely separate and clean, because I can't mix my personal life with my professional life. I just think it's very unhealthy. It's a matter of brain hygiene, if you wish. That is also part of the spiritual. How do you experience your career? How do you experience your personal life? They're two different things. Don't mix them because it's not the same thing, right? So relationships, very responsible choices the older we get.
Yes, I agree. And I noticed that you mentioned depression as a result of all the wrong ways to live. When someone reads your book, can that help with their depression, provided they're not clinically depressed, where they actually need
Right.
medication? Sometimes there's just, circumstances that makes them very sad.
Situational depression, of course.
Situational, yes. So what do you have to say about depression of that nature?
Depression and anxiety, they go very close together. Depression can be lifted when you define inspiring goals for yourself that are independent of other people's opinions. And then anxiety, I used to be an extremely anxious person. Now, I never took medication for it. However, it did prevent me from enjoying many things that I was doing and underappreciating my life because of anxiety. So in chapter 3, I have discussed the anxiety, that how it has debilitated the lives of so many people in the United States. But anxiety can be used as a tool, as a motivating factor to prompt you to solve things that you haven't solved. That's what most of anxiety is. It's a responsibility check. And if you recognize why you're anxious, what you could have done better yesterday, you can do better today, that needs to be done, and you keep putting it off, and you actually do that activity that will contribute to the betterment of your life, then you will be less anxious. If you use anxiety as an ally rather than a foe, like an enemy.
Yeah. You mentioned yoga, something I did quite a bit in my 40s, and then in 50s, I sort of dropped off, stopped doing it. Mindfulness training is an interesting thing. I plan on getting back into it. You want us to talk about mindfulness?
Mindfulness, yes. You can exercise mindfulness any second of your life. For instance, I'm mindful right now that we're having a wonderful conversation. I'm mindful of your time that you're spending with me, of your willingness to ask me about my life. I'm mindful about the opportunity to see you through the amazing thing called the internet, which we couldn't dream about 40 years ago, right? All these are mindful things. I'm also mindful of how much work it has taken to develop all these tools. Yoga, I did for 7 years, and then I went into martial arts for 12 years. So you don't have to be necessarily an active yoga practitioner to be mindful of things. It's a simple thing that you spend a little time on, and there are so many writers that have written about mindfulness, and yoga helps. Martial arts helps because you truly focus on yourself and the relationship between your mind, emotions, and body, and that does help if you're serious about it. Yeah, mindfulness is very important. It helps you appreciate everything you have at a much different level.
So how are sales for you for this book?
Well, reasonable. I have very good feedback from those who have read it. It has changed a couple of people's mindset on several life aspects. A couple of people actually said it changed their lives, which is exactly what I want. One person at a time. You can help people one person at a time. That's the most realistic, and that's really what I want, because I know that one friend said some of the things are pretty extreme in the book. Then somebody else was offended, who was not a friend, but said, well, this system just seems way too hard to do. And I'm thinking, well, it better be if you want to get anywhere beyond average. Because if you stay average, you'll get average results. So you need to challenge yourself in some way so that you know that you can handle more than you have been handling up to this point to improve your life in any way you want. But the reception has been very good. Several people were upset with it, which is fine. I've never aimed to be a crowd pleaser anyways. And I'm not the nicest person when I write, because I am from Eastern Europe. I'm a middle-aged Balkan Peninsula woman. So we're not the nicest people because we say things the way we see them. But I even had some, back and forth with my editor at the time when we were publishing the book, who said, well, this and this can alienate the reader. I said, no, you're leaving it exactly the way it is, because it's not going to be another sugar-coated explanation of how you can make things better without actually making you face your problems in front of your own moral, ethical mirror that you have to stand in front every day if you really want to get any worse in your life. And again, I experienced the early midlife crisis. It was a crossroads in life, which was very hard for me. And I know that there are millions of people who have gone through this, are going through this right now, or even much worse, way worse than what I have experienced. And the book is just meant to say, look, if I could do it, you can do it. And it is the book that I wish I could have read 15 years ago, honestly. That's all this book is about. If I had this book 15 years ago, I think things would have been slightly easier for me. And I want to help people make it easier for themselves and to show them they're not alone, right? But you are alone in your responsibility towards yourself. You're not alone in the way that others have experienced similar problems with, like you, but you're alone with your responsibility to accomplish what you want to accomplish. We can support you along the way. You can read any book on self-confidence and self-esteem, but ultimately the action steps, that's up to you. Yeah. So the reception of the book, it has been pretty good for the most part, but I'll be honest with you, some people were not happy to read what's in there. And that's fine. That's perfectly fine.
Okay. Well, I'm from Eastern Europe too. I bet you I won't have a problem with anything you write in there. I'm kind of that way as well. Talk briefly about your YouTube channel and your website. I find that very fascinating.
Oh yeah, that's funny. Well, the website I contribute to, I create my own pages with the blog and everything. I did use a designer at first, but the YouTube channel is a very new thing. I just want people to get to know me a little bit better. I'm obviously very new at it. I'm learning how to talk in front of camera. I'm learning to use software, another completely different learning curve again. Using picture software, using video editor, all that stuff. And it's becoming more fun because the more I learn, the more things I can do. And it's just my way not to be afraid of technology, which scares many people because it's just evolving so fast. And I come from a place that had no technology when I was growing up. Mind you, I was 23 years old in 1999 when I touched a computer keyboard for the first time for my TOEFL examination for the American University. It was test of English as a foreign language, so that was computer done. And that was the first time I ever touched a computer keyboard. I was 23 years old. And when I came here at 24 as a student in August of 2000, a very kind graduate student helped me set up my first email address. So I'm a very late starter in many, many ways. So the YouTube channel is another proof of that. And so it teaches me many more skills than I thought I would have to learn. I just thought I was supposed to relax in front of a camera. Now I'm learning about lights, about microphone, software, editing, and it's just a whole different, I love that. I love that. But it's really to get people to know me and to see that I'm not afraid of being a new starter every time I start something new, so that they can stop being afraid for themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Well, any final words you want to say before we part company?
I want to tell people who are thinking that their lives are broken, that this is, if you take action now, you will really appreciate this action 5 to 10 years from now. And if you notice something is wrong, handle it. Handle it, because it's really a wonderful opportunity to see how much you can accomplish way beyond you thought that you could accomplish. And you'll be very pleasantly surprised with your abilities to handle problems that you didn't deem manageable before. I really speak from personal experience, and it's a journey worth pursuing. I'm really, really convinced about that. And if I could do it, anybody can do it.
Wonderful. Alexandra, it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Likewise, John, thank you so much for having me.
And I wish you all the success in the future.
Same to you. Thank you so much.
Take care. Thank you for watching. And before you go, if you like what I do here on Tell Me About Your Book, then consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and don't forget to ring that bell for future notifications. You can even leave a comment. All of that really helps in recommending this channel to a larger audience. And if you are an author, I would love to speak with you about your book. Until next time, keep on writing and be kind to one another.